Hello, you are watching news from Kazakhstan. I am Nurbek Savitakhunov and these are the headlines. After two emergencies at frontier posts, the government decides to rewrite the law on state borders. The document may be ratified by Parliament this fall. ArcelorMittal miners will not go on a preventive strike. The company agreed to raise wages to workers of the coal department. Journalists from Zhanaozian.net were summoned for questioning in connection with the picket in support of Director Atabayev and politician Mamai. The trial over the illegal rally will be held in the near future. Two emergencies at the Arkan-Kergen and Tersayryk border outposts made the authorities consider a change of legislation. Member of Parliament Maulana Shambayev announced on Wednesday, June 20th, that the government is drafting a law on state borders. It is not yet known what innovations will be included in the bill, but experts are already skeptical about the future document. Opinions in the next story.
15 deaths at Arkan-Kergen and 11 border guard soldiers who went absent without official leave from Tersayryk outpost revealed the instability of Kazakh borders. Wide publicity forced the government to respond in haste. The MPs announced that a new law is being developed. Soon it will be presented before Parliament. I can assure you that this bill will be elaborated very seriously. We will try to incorporate the relevant rules, which will enable to prevent incidents similar to one on Arkan-Kergen outpost. In order not to leave out anything in the new law, the MPs are going to visit the border areas, although this will only take place in the fall, at the beginning of the next parliamentary session. In the meantime, MPs draw parallels between border guards and school children who make mess in classrooms and dodge the school just to aggravate the teacher. They took their border service duties in a very irresponsible manner, as if they were in high school or at home with their family and friends. They ignored the fact that they were entrusted with weapons and the fact that they are obliged to protect the border. The new law is still in elaboration stage, yet the experts already doubt whether the document is likely to change the situation for better. Former Vice Minister of Defense Amirbek Togusov suggested withdrawing the border service from the National Security Committee. He's afraid that the bill would be roughly drafted as the MPs are already about to pass it. The former military official emphasizes that the fact that the border service were entitled to introduce amendments into a bill implies the risk of loopholes for corruption. The primary law drafters in this case are border service under NSC. Why are concerned agencies empowered to pass the important statuses? Once again, the border service passes the bill that would benefit them. This is a state law to begin with, and the government shall be responsible for law drafting. What amendments would be introduced into the law on state border, which was adopted and repeatedly underwent minor changes at the dawn of independence, is still unclear. The new bill is not yet available for ordinary Kazakhstan citizens. Based on quite skeptical reaction on the internet, many people doubt the effectiveness of government initiatives. Internet users make comments that, for a start, we need to see the investigation results on Arkan-Kergen tragedy and the Tersayryk outpost incident.
In the meantime, the investigation team at Tersayryk in East Kazakhstan is examining the circumstances of the 11 border guards' escape from duty. However, the commandant's office in the nearest locality does not consider this an emergency situation. Here's why.
We are about 50 kilometers away from the border between China and Kazakhstan and about 30 kilometers from the border zone. It is impossible to go further without a special permit. Is it in this zone where the outpost Tersayryk is located, where 11 border guards went missing the other day? Now the question many people ask, including journalists, is does this mysterious temporary missing relate to the horrifying events in Arkan-Kergen, where 15 people were killed on the night of May 28th? However, the residents of the settlement closest to Tersayryk town of Akzhar are not supporting this opinion. In particular, I mean the Akzhar command post. We have managed to talk with one of the representatives who refused to disclose his name. In his opinion, according to the information he has, these 11 border guards simply went to the closest village to a dance club. This is the only piece of information we have for now, but we will report more as soon as we find out something new.
Supporters of Director Bolat Atabayev and politician Jean-Bolat Mamai were not forgiven for their picket at the walls of the National Security Committee detention ward held on June 15th. On Wednesday, policemen entered the office of Zhanaozian.net and handed Inga Amanbay Salamat Amash and Anar Abildai a summons for interrogation at the police department. The young journalists are charged under Article 373 of the Code of Administrative Offenses for organizing and holding peaceful meetings, rallies, and marches. The court date will be announced separately.
We have evidence for administrative charges against you, therefore we have to take you to the Almaty District Police Department. I have to draw a protocol in accordance with the administrative law, as this is apparently an administrative arrest. Reporters were handed the summons half an hour before their appointment in the local TIA. The police car that was parked next to the office all this time later took Inga Imanbay and Anar Abildaeva for questioning. This was already the second time the activists were detained, as they were previously fined for the participation in an unsanctioned dissenters rally. The reporters consider the arrest unlawful.
The
arrest of Bolat Atabayev and Jean-Bolat Mamay, along with the administrative case instigated against us, can be perceived as regime fighting the dissent. On June 15th, activists organized a picket in Almaty, marching with posters and demanding the release of Bolat Atabayev and Jean-Bolat Mamay, arrested on the same day on charges of inciting social hatred. The youth group led by Inga Imanbay and Salamat Tomashev headed towards the National Security Committee building. The authorities found the action illegal. We want to go there with you and together with other young people ask for the information of activists' whereabouts after their detention. Also, they are not criminals, so let's demand their release.
The German government, in the face of Commissioner for Human Rights and International Aid Markus Lenning, appealed to Kazakh authorities to release the arrested director Bolat Atabayev. As reported by Deutsche Welle, the director's German colleagues, as well as Goethe Institute, which awarded Atabayev the Medal of Merit for developing German-Kazakh relations in the field of culture, joined in on the request. The award ceremony will be held on August 28th in Weimar, but in all likelihood Atabayev will be unable to attend.
I expect Kazakh government to fulfill its obligations, and I call the authorities of the country to immediately release Bolat Atabayev, drop all charges, and allow him to travel to Weimar to accept the Goethe Award.
In other news, June 20th marks World Refugee Day. As reported by Radio Azatik, at present there are about 15 Kazakh families residing in Poland that left Zhanaozen during the unrest. Some of them were able to get in touch with the station to share their story.
The woman named Dina Babisheva contacted the internet publication. She says members of Muslim organization helped her flee to Poland through Turkey. Her husband, Bigbalsyn Kazhanazarov, worked for Karajan Basmunay company and participated in strikes. He has been missing since August. Dina's neighbors have already submitted documents to acquire a refugee status. The decision regarding assigning a status will be taken in a half a year. Meanwhile, there is no mention of immigrants from Zhanaozen at the Almaty conference devoted to World Refugee Day. Officials at UN High Commissioner for Refugees in Kazakhstan do not have all the information. Furthermore, they did not know the exact number of forced migrants within the country. I refer to Kazakhstan as the state where people live in peace and conciliation. As opposed to other countries, there are very few refugees in Kazakhstan. Currently, we can provide all the information regarding refugees in Central Asia. However, we do not have the information regarding Zhanaozen refugees. Once this information becomes available, we'll certainly share it with the media.
Searches for an escaped prisoner continue in Aktau. The four-time 25-year-old convict serving for theft, Denis Borodin, escaped with the help of several bed sheets tied together, along with a wooden board, which helped him get to the roof of the neighboring office building.
In order to capture the fugitive, the city exit roads had been blocked. Internal investigation in a temporary detention facility is currently underway. This information started rumors in Zhanaozen that isolation ward security will be tightened because of the escaped prisoner. The worried wives of 13 convicted oil workers detained in the facility arrived in Aktau on Wednesday to make sure that their loved ones are all right. I've just visited my client, Maksat Dasmagambetov, and he had no complaints. Nothing seemed to change in the detention facility. They're not subjected to any unlawful treatment. We've discussed the appeal petition with him. Of course, they are concerned that the fugitives broke out from this particular detention facility. Otherwise, the temporary detention facility operates in a regular mode. I haven't noticed any extraordinary security measures.
Witness interviews and studies of video materials continued at the trial of former Zhanaozen mayor Orak Sarbapev on Wednesday. The ex-mayor is charged on 3 counts, one of which is accepting bribes of especially large amounts.
The prosecution witness Zhenizbek Sudikov confirmed the instance of corruption by the former governor in court. The attorneys of Sarbapev requested to withdraw the footage of his investigation testimony from the case, pointing out that the earlier and present testimonies of a witness do not match. The judge rejected the defense motion. Later, the floor was given to the defendant himself. Sarbapev completely denied his guilt, saying that if they try him, the manager of Kazmunaygas company shall be on trial as well. After all, they signed the document on the allocation of funds for the construction of the 200-unit apartment block together. Finally, Sarbapev appealed to the president by thanking Nazarbayev for the fair, in his opinion, laws.
The incident where children were infected with hepatitis C while undergoing treatment in the National Pediatric Center continues. An Almaty District Court reviewed a new lawsuit filed by victims' parents. This time, healthcare providers will be dealing with mothers from Kızılorda, Taldykorgan, Uralsk, and Almaty. Whether the trial will be open to the public is yet unknown.
We believe that too much involvement and uncontrolled access to the trial will negatively affect the legal rights and interests of the Kazakh citizens, which are protected by the constitution. With this in mind, we demand that the trial be held behind closed doors. Medical workers demand a closed trial due to confidential donor information and taking into account that previous trials were held without mass media involvement. The accusing party, on the contrary, demands an open trial. It is important for those affected to get the message across to the public. They say that donors are not considered as sick people, therefore, the information regarding donors cannot be regarded as patient confidentiality. We are certain that everyone needs to know what is happening in reality, all the information regarding donors. Before taking the issue to court, the complainant's relatives passed all medical tests and hepatitis was not revealed.
Meanwhile, Karaganda miners will not take part in the strike aimed at increasing wages. The metallurgists will go at it alone this time. Last fall, ArcelorMittal employees demanded a 30% pay raise. All stages of peaceful negotiations were passed, and a workers' meeting was held. However, the last method of influence on the employer will be conducted without the miners. ArcelorMittal steelworkers are planning to hold the strike on Friday. The Jaktau labor union carefully dubbed it as experimental. The labor union committee plans that on June 29th from 7 to 10 a.m., only those workers whose labor is not associated with a continuous production cycle will skip work.
As a reminder, about a month ago, the trade union leaders of metallurgists and coal miners started to collect signatures to participate in the strike. No less than 50% of employees of each industry were supposed to support the protests. While the metallurgists have managed to overcome the barrier, only 40% of coal miners agreed to a strike. Moreover, the press service of ArcelorMittal company stated on Wednesday that an agreement has been signed with the coal miners' trade union Korgao on a 10% increase of salaries for employees of the mining department. It was this concession that started a protest in May, which stated that the industrial giant was going to increase salaries only by 2.6% and only under the condition of meeting the production output goals. The remaining 7.4% is a guaranteed inflation adjustment that the workers would have received in any case. Nonetheless, on the eve of the proposed strike, the miners decided to compromise. According to the miners' trade union representatives, metallurgists have lost the miners' support because the latter are mostly for the peaceful negotiations. The miners understand perfectly well that if you don't work at the mine for a month or half a month, everything will collapse under the mountainous geological conditions, and then we will have to go there and work again.
The difference in incomes between the rich and the poor in Kazakhstan is increasing. This was voiced on Wednesday by the MPs who referred to experts from the Economics Institute. In order to decrease the social gap, MPs proposed to introduce progressive rates to the individual income tax. Simply put, Kazakh citizens will face fiscal deductions according to their profits. In other words, the higher the salary, the higher the tax. Taxes for those whose income does not exceed $150 per month will be nullified, as is done in European countries.
To implement the principle of social equality between the rich and the poor, we need to consider adopting progressive rates for individual income taxes. The measure has been introduced in all advanced countries around the world, where the income tax rate for the poor is 0, while for the rich it can go as high as 50%. Until 2007, Kazakhstan already used the system for progressive tax rates, with income taxes ranging from 5 to 20%. The MPs now propose to return to old calculations, believing it will bring social equality and increase budget revenues. In the European Union, individual income taxes make up a significant portion of the treasury revenues, whereas in Kazakhstan this figure is only 7%. In the meantime, the Interior Ministry came up with another method of getting money from the wealthy Kazakhstani citizens, namely selling them limited edition license plates. On Wednesday, the ministry presented the new plates design, which will feature changed identification of regions. It will be no longer done with alphabet letters, but with numbers instead, like in Russia. Limited edition license plates will cost from $1,300 to $2,600. If the owner decides to sell the car, he will be able to keep the license plate according to this legislation.
A possible dismissal of the cabinet remains the main political intrigue of the season. However, both opposition and pro-government political experts and politicians doubt this scenario. The highly rare unanimity of opposing camps is explained by inconsistency of threats made by the MPs, which warned Masimov's cabinet with imminent dismissal after finding multi-billion-dollar violations during the utilization of last year's budget.
I'm not sure that this parliament simply, in a very short period of time, based on emotions and attempts to make sensation out of speech an important political institution as the government, can make this step. For this, they need a whole system of relationships that would be discredited. The government needs to show itself as anti-people. Opposition politicians are more categorical in their forecasts. They are saying that the current parliament, albeit in its three-chamber form, is not capable of firing even individual ministers, not to mention the entire cabinet headed by Masimov, who is considered to be the longest-sitting minister. The parliament, however, has no authority to fire the government. According to the constitution, it only can express its distrust. This can happen at the joint session of all parliament chambers in June 22nd. The agenda for that day includes the same report by the cabinet of ministers on budget execution. Nonetheless, the final word will still be the president's. However, it was Nursultan Nazarbayev who demanded during a meeting with parliamentary factions leaders that parliamentarians be tougher with the executive power representatives and use their authority at the fullest. Nonetheless, the opposition does not believe that the Nuratan parliamentary majority will be able to fire Masimov's cabinet. The Nuratan parliament cannot fire the Nuratan government. For this, there must be a real multi-party parliament. Second, they cannot do it psychologically because, unfortunately, we all know how this parliament was elected and all deputies who are in the parliament know how and what brought them to the parliament. I believe it would be again a storm in a teacup before another plenary session. By definition, this is not possible in Kazakhstan.
A criminal case was filed against the former director of Children's Center in Pavlodar, Galina Motina, on the fact of the purchase of baseball caps with symbols of Nuratan political party. Financial police officials claim that the caps in question were purchased illegally. However, Motina claims that her superiors have forced her to buy those caps, despite the fact that they must be provided free of charge.
I was forced to buy stolen baseball caps. When I was working on my defense in January, I called Nuratan's party's office and found out that the baseball caps, along with other campaign materials, are distributed by the center for free. There had been several attempts to fire former director at Kola's Child Center from her job. However, Galina Motina managed to retain her position. When the head of utility company retired in 2011, several criminal cases were brought against her. Currently, she's facing charges under 16 episodes, including forgery by an official, abuse of office, and embezzling budget funds. As for the baseball caps case, Motina claims that in autumn 2009, being the head of the Child Center, she received instructions from Department of Culture and Language Development to finance election campaign of Nuratan National Democratic Party. The Child Center spent around $750 to purchase several hundred t-shirts and baseball caps with the president's party logo on them. The later purchased items were distributed among the party's meeting participants. The former director says she was offered to make up for inappropriate spending by forging labor contracts. However, the financial police does not seem content with this explanation. As for the question relating to caps with Nuratan's party logo, it doesn't really matter in regards to whom the official powers were exceeded. What matters is that the accused did exceed her official powers, because the caps in question were never recorded in the estimate of costs.
In similar news, 4 members of the State Architecture and Construction Control Department in Shymkent were detained all at once on suspicion of taking bribes.
$2,500. This is the monetary award set by the State Architecture and Construction Control Department's employees for a director of small business to speed up paperwork on a license to carry out the construction and installation works. On the same day, a case of bribery and facilitation was started against the arrested employees of the SACC Licensing and Assessment Department. In relation to department head Muslimov and specialist Bazarbayev, a criminal case has been initiated based on the fact of taking a bribe under Article 311, Part 4. Also, a criminal case has been started in relation to Sarsenbekov and citizen Kulikov based on the fact of facilitation of bribery. At present, all the accused have been detained and arrested. Other information will not be disclosed in the interests of the investigation. The public will be informed about the results.
Finally, in order to raise the patriotic spirit of athletes, the Ministry of Sports prepared a code of honor for members of the national team traveling to London for the Olympics. This was voiced by chairman of the responsible agency, Talhat Yermegiyayev, during a meeting in Akorda with the State Secretary Mukhtar Kulmuhamed.
So far, Kazakhstan obtained 107 Olympic passports. Track and field athletes have most of them 18 licenses. As usual, high hopes are placed on boxers and weightlifters. Sports officials expect at least 3 gold Olympic medals. There is a chance for 10 more athletes to go to London and represent the country in swimming and track field athletics, as the final selection hasn't been made for these sports yet. It should be noted that Kazakhstan failed to win licenses in tennis and badminton for the upcoming Olympics. No one is going to represent Kazakhstan on cycle track and horse racing either.
This is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.